السلام عليكم. Welcome back to another episode of Quran in English. My name is Ahmed, and I'm happy to take you through another section of Surah Al Anbiya, the chapter of the prophets. It's been very interesting so far, but it's been mostly kind of, describing general concepts. And finally, now into these verses, we get into story time, which, as you know, as part of this channel, I love story time quite a lot. I do want to explain one verse or retouch upon a verse that I covered yesterday. But I will do that after I give you the disclaimer. The disclaimers are: I'm not a Arabic linguist, nor am I a Quranic scholar. I've not studied the Arabic language beyond school, nor have I studied the Quran. In fact, this is my first read-through for a lot of the Quran. Some parts of it I've read it several times before, but I'm merely going on a journey to read the verses bit by bit, analyze, think, see what I can understand, as the purpose of this channel is education. I'm trying to learn from the Quran, see what I can understand first. First, what is exactly being said is important to me, and that's why I'm focusing only on the Quran. But I'm not claiming to be an authority or a source, but I am sharing my best understanding in the hopes that you might learn something. But if you have a different perspective, please let me know, and I will happily learn from you as much as I hope that you're learning from me. So the one verse that I wanted to talk about from yesterday that I thought was actually the most interesting, did they not see, the ones that disbelieved, did they not see that the heavens and the earth were a joint entity, so we parted them? And I thought this was very interesting, and I was thinking about many different concepts and many different theories. And then a comment reached me saying, oh, this is talking about the Big Bang. And I was like, oh, hang on a second, I've heard of that before. I've heard of the Quran mentioning the Big Bang. I've heard of this verse talking about the Big Bang. The first time I heard it, I was like, wow, makes sense. The Quran's talking about the Big Bang before it used to be. It was well known. And then, of course, I thought about it. And I was like, okay, so, yeah, the Big Bang says everything was one and then it was separated. I don't know if that's what this verse is saying. It's saying that the heavens and the earth were a joint entity. And then they were split apart. And then I was thinking, okay, the Big Bang talks about everything blowing up, and then the formation of like planets, and then the formation of stars. Does it mean that the sky was a part of the earth in that concept? I didn't feel like, when I thought about it and resolved it, when I first heard that it was the Big Bang, I'm like, oh wow, miracles of the Quran, wow, amazing, fantastic. When I thought about it a little bit more, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't think this is what this verse is talking about. But as you know me, I don't necessarily take what information is given to me freely. And I always think about it and see if it makes sense. It could be talking about the Big Bang, that they were once together and then they got separated. But I feel like it's talking about something else, and therefore I stand by what I was talking about in the previous episode. I don't know. I could be wrong. It could be just the Big Bang, and I could just be missing the point. But it felt like it's specifically talking about the heavens and the earth. And I feel like there's also like a connection between the sky, the heavens, and heaven, and the earth. I don't know. I don't feel like it's talking about the Big Bang. But that's enough about yesterday's episode. I just wanted to kind of share that tidbit with you in case you thought it and you're like, why didn't he say it? But yeah, that's all I want to say before we get into the Quran. It's story time, and before reading the Quran, we must always say, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, and off we go. Oh.
ولقد آتينا إبراهيم رشده من قبل وكنا به عالمين.
And verily we had given Abraham his guidance, his wisdom, his sound judgment from before, and we were about him well knowing. Now here they've added the word well knowing to be worthy, as if God knows that he's going to be worthy. Knowing someone obviously can mean that you're knowing what their worth is, you're knowing what they're going to do, you know what they're capable of. It could mean a variety of things. It just specifically says, and we were about him well knowing. Like they knew about Abraham. He was chosen for a specific reason. Even though he was given guidance, which also can mean a bunch of things. Here it can mean sound judgment, or it can mean that he was guided by God or by like an angel, for example, or another human guide, or some sort of inspiration. There's many ways that guidance can be given, and I do believe Abraham is one of the ones that does talk to God. But anyway, he was given this guidance, and we used to, they were knowing about Abraham. He was specifically selected for who he was, which is beautiful, and thus we set the scene. So what did Abraham do?
إذ قال لأبيه وقومه ما هذه التماثيل التي أنتم لها عاكفون.
When he said to his father and his people, his village, his people, what are these statues? What are these idols that you are, devoted to it? Because at the time of Abraham, they used to have a bunch of statues. Actually, also used to be in the. I don't want to cross the wires, because I do know that there was a point in time where Al Masjid Al Haram, as it is now, used to have statues and idols. But I think that was at the time of the Prophet, so I don't want to cross my times. But either way, at the time of Abraham, his people, his family, his father, his people used to pray to idols, and used to devote to them, give them I don't know if it was giving them sacrifices, but essentially they were devoted to them. They were taking care of them. They were treating them as if they were their gods, And Abraham's asking, so what's up with these statues?
قالوا وجدنا آباءنا لها عابدين.
And the long and short of it is, they responded with, they said, we found our forefathers for them worshiping. So this indicates several things. One, the people don't know why they're worshiping these things. They just know that their fathers were worshiping them, and therefore their forefathers, their ancestors were worshiping them, and they continued to worship. Like, this is what we learned, and this is what we're going to do. Which is also an indicative about the human nature of things. Humans tend to hold very dear and very near what their forefathers have done and what their forefathers have said. And we are no exception. Even the Muslim community, the Christian community, the Jewish community, follow what our forefathers have been doing. Yes, we also have the Quran as a guidance, which is beautiful, but not everyone reads the full Quran, for example, and they just follow with what is being said, what is being shared, what is being believed based off of the above. Does that mean it's all accurate? Does that mean that some of it is right, some of it's wrong? Also, why I'm reading the Quran specifically and starting from the Quran is because I want to know exactly what God said and not necessarily what man has taught us. It's kind of an interesting perspective. But this has been a tale as old as time. It's not unique to this time. It's not unique to any time. Always humans tend to do monkey see, monkey do. What their parents did, they did.
قال لقد كنتم أنتم وآباؤكم في ضلال مبين.
So Abraham said, surely you and your forefathers in dalal mubin, an error. You've been misguided. That you're clearly misguided. You're in confusion. You're in darkness. You're not. You're all a little bit confused, is what he's saying, and he's saying it's very obvious. It's very obvious that you're confused. So, okay, Abraham versus what they believe. This is the challenge. And this kind of also happens is a pattern that we see. The people that change their societies, their people that change the views, they tend to be first seen as disruptors, as rejectors of tradition. They're always seen as these things. It's a tale as old as time.
قالوا أجئتنا بالحق أم أنت من اللاعبين.
So they responded to him. They said, oh no, he said this. They said, have you come to us in truth? Like, are you being real right now? Or are you one of the ones who are playing? Or are you just playing? You're just trying to rile us up. Like, are you seriously just attacking our cherished traditions, things that we all agreed upon, we all follow, and we all do? Is that what's happening right now?
قال بل ربكم رب السماوات والأرض الذي فطرهن وأنا على ذلكم من الشاهدين.
So he, reinforces what he's been saying, and he says, nay, actually, your God, the God of the heavens and the earth, the one who created them, and I are to that being that you guys are misguided, we are that to witnesses. So God and I see that you guys are confused, and I'm telling you, you're confused. You're praying to statues, and you're thinking something's going to happen. Like, huh? What you doing? What you doing there, buddy?
وتالله لأكيدن أصنامكم بعد أن تولوا مدبرين.
Now, something that is not said in this verse, but it adds it to himself. It says that he said to himself, because he says, and by God, I will surely plan against your idols after you go away turning your backs. So I can't imagine he told them that. I do imagine that him saying this to himself makes sense. I don't know what else is being said. The Quran obviously doesn't, give you every single detail. There are some things that you have to kind of make conjectures of. I don't think that he told them, and there's a reason why you don't think that he told them, because later on they don't know what happened and they start questioning, and then they ask him. So if he had told them this, then they would know, oh, you're going to cause an issue. So this must be to himself. But the way that it's also phrased, it says, by God, I will surely plan against your idols. So saying it to himself against them kind of makes sense. It's just very interesting. After you go away turning your backs, which also you can kind of imagine that there was more of an exchange back and forth when he dug himself and they kind of realized he wasn't playing and he was being serious. They got angry, they did this, they did that. So because you could feel like he's determined to pull them away from the idol worship. So what did he do?
فجعلهم جذاذا إلا كبيرا لهم لعلهم إليه يرجعون.
So he made them into pieces. If you make one object into pieces, you're smashing it. He smashed them all except for the large one of them, so that they may go to it, and here it says for answers, so they may turn to it, is the exact phrases. It doesn't say turn to it for answers, so that they may turn to it. Now here, it means multiple things. It's more than just turn to it for answers, and we will see what he plans to do with this big statue a little bit down the line. But essentially, he kept one statue alive, and for a part of his plan, a part of his plot.
قالوا من فعل هذا بآلهتنا إنه لمن الظالمين.
They said, who has done this to our gods? Indeed, he is of the wrongdoers. He's an evildoer. He's a bastard. He's a terrible person. Who would do this to our gods, the gods that we love, cherish, and worship? Like, who would do this?
قالوا سمعنا فتى يذكرهم يقال له إبراهيم.
They said, we heard a youth mentioning them, and he is called Abraham. Here it says mentioning them. They added the word speaking ill of them. But I mean, essentially, we saw the exchange earlier before. He told them, why are you worshiping them? That they're not real? My God and me say you're confused. So word gets back to the people. They're like, oh, Abraham was saying all the stuff. He probably did it. So
قالوا فأتوا به على أعين الناس لعلهم يشهدون.
They said, so then bring him before the eyes of the people, so that they may bear witness. Bring him before the people. Time to put him to trial. What is going on? What is happening? Why would you desecrate what we believe?
قالوا أأنت فعلت هذا بآلهتنا يا إبراهيم
They said, have you done this to our gods, Abraham? Is this your work? Is this what you've done? So then he says something wild.
قال بل فعله كبيرهم هذا فاسألوهم إن كانوا ينطقون.
He said, nay, the one that did it was the biggest of them, the one that he left unsmashed. And I remember the story being told to me as if he had an axe to smash them with, or like a pickaxe. I don't know why there was no mention of the pickaxe. Anyway, the big one was left, and he said, the big one did it. The big one did this, so ask him. And if they can speak, ask this big statue. You know, you worship to this thing. The thing was in front of everyone else. Ask your thing. That first he says the big one did it, and then he says ask him. So that's why in the previous verses ago they said he left it so that they can ask him. But he also left it so he can accuse it. Now, here they're adding the word sarcastically, but that's not what he was doing. He said the big one did it, which we know is not the truth. Because they asked him who smashed the idols, and instead of him answering myself, which is the truth, he says the big one did it, which is not true. Of course, he's trying to prove a point, and he's trying to, make an example. And they have a realization shortly after, but he lied, which I was like, okay, this is interesting. It begs the question, what does the Quran say about truth? Does the Quran tell us not to lie out of curiosity? Strongly prohibits lying, and it calls it a major sin, a sickness to the heart. Quran verses. The reason why, I'm asking these dumb questions. Actually, this verse was brought up to me recently. SubhanAllah. Sometimes everything comes together quite beautifully. And do not mix truth with falsehood, and conceal the truth while you know. So the Quran is very explicit, and obviously there's a lot about lying, lying about God is its own punishment and own issues. And in their heart there is sickness, so we increase them. About what they used to lie. Generally, lying is pretty bad, but this is a pretty clear one. The Quran does say, and it's always been the guidance of God, that you should not mix truth with falsehood. So why is Abraham saying something that is not true? Are there exceptions for the prophets or messengers? Is that what is to be understood? Or was that a mistake done by the prophet Abraham? Because it doesn't say that he was instructed to lie, but it says that he did lie. And there are consequences to this action, and the consequences will come up, but eventually the consequences lead to a positive outcome. So there's this big question mark of why the lie. His point is that, ask him so that see if you can speak. So essentially the point is he's kind of pointing out how stupid it is to worship something that can't even help itself, can't even communicate to you what happened. You have zero interactivity whatsoever. It's there, and you're praying to it. So where is the thing that you're worshiping? It makes sense as to why he's doing it, but nonetheless, it was a lie. And I'm not sure how I feel about it, or what is it supposed to mean. They've added the word sarcastically, as if, lying's fine as long as you're being sarcastic. No, this one, I don't know. I cannot imagine he did it sarcastically because they all put him to trial. He doesn't seem like he's being cheeky. He seems like he was very adamant, and he told them that you're worshiping pointless rocks. So I can't take this as anything other than a lie, and it's very, very strange as to why he would. He said very clearly, nay, the one that did it is their chief. فَعَلَهُ كَبِيرَهُمْ هَذَا. This large one of theirs is the one that did it. Lots of implications about what this means, about what this indicates, about are there exceptions to telling the truth? And okay, so there are other ideas and concepts. There is a famous family around the time of the Prophet Muhammad, Ala Yasir, which means the family of Yasir. And essentially they were being tortured by the pagans who were forcing them to deny God and forcing them to accept their gods. And the understanding, the phrase, Sabran ya ala Yasir, patience, O family of Yasir, because inna maw'idakum al-jannah, your what is being promised to you is heaven. And the understanding is that they didn't have to die for their beliefs. There are exceptions. If you are saving yourself, you are allowed to, make concessions to survive. You don't have to, if the truth, like, if you're being tortured and you're being told you have to worship these idols, you can lie and say you're worshiping things that aren't there. Like, God's not going to punish you for, protecting yourself, I guess. So there are some exceptions to telling the truth, primarily if there's like danger and concept. But this didn't feel, maybe this is danger, maybe this is, but in the end, he goes to danger as a result of what is being said. Because he's saying something that's ridiculous that they can't exactly accept. So the question is, why did he lie? Was he allowed to lie? Was it a mistake? I don't know.
فرجعوا إلى أنفسهم فقالوا إنكم أنتم الظالمون.
And for a brief moment, they returned to themselves and they said, oh, indeed, you are the wrongdoers. They're like, oh, we can't ask the statue. Wait, the statue can't tell us anything. Wait, actually, what are we doing here? Why are we worshiping? What is happening? Maybe he has a point. But this is a very, very brief moment of them realizing we're wrong. And then they snap back to it. They're like, yeah, but still, we believed it. And he did that, so...
ثم نكسوا على رؤوسهم لقد علمت ما هؤلاء ينطقون.
Yeah, and here there's a bunch of reasons why, but essentially it says they turned on their heads, as in they changed their minds, and verily they said, verily you know that these can't speak. And then when they realized they can't speak, they knew that Abraham knew that he can't speak. Then he's saying that it did it, and then ask the statue, and they're like, what? What is... Okay, all right, you're clearly messing with us. Clearly you've done it. Clearly you're screwing with us. So the very short-lived moment of clarity that they had.
قال أفتعبدون من دون الله ما لا ينفعكم شيئا ولا يضركم.
So Abraham continues and says, do you really worship besides God what does not benefit you in a thing and does not harm you? Like, really, that's what you're worshiping a pointless thing. I remember this when I first read it as him saying it can't even help itself, but that's not the words that are in front of us. It can't help you and it can't hurt you. It can't do nothing. Even though I destroyed them, what's going to happen to me? Nothing's like these things aren't going to do anything to me. These things aren't going to attack. Well, the statues and the idols aren't going to do anything to him. But first, he continues the beratement.
أُفٍّ لكم ولما تعبدون من دون الله أفلا تعقلون.
He says, uffin lakum, and uff is an interesting Arabic expression. oof. Like, oof is like, oh boy. Like, and there's an expression, there's a Quranic verse that says, وَلَا تَقُلْ I'm going to butcher it, so I'm going to paraphrase it. Don't tell your parents, oof. The idea of like, if your parents tell you something and you go, oof, it's like, it's like, god damn, why do I have to do so? Don't tell your parents oof, because oof is a sign of like frustration, is a sign of like exasperation, like So he says oof to you, and what you worship from besides God. Do you not use reason? Just think a little bit, and then you realize that worshiping these things is pointless, is not right. But it's okay. So what did they decide to do to him? The idols can't do anything to him, but the people whom he just destroyed their stuff and then told them all that you're not using reason and kind of told them to listen to the statue, like, they get mad. So what do?
قالوا حرقوه وانصروا آلهتكم إن كنتم فاعلين.
They said, burn him and support your gods if you are doing. If you're going to do anything, burn him and avenge your gods. He just desecrated your entire pantheon of what you used to worship, what your forefathers used to worship, what we all spent our whole lives dedicating. He disrespected you, disrespected the gods. Burn him, is what they said. So they grabbed Abraham and they put him on the stake and they set him on fire. How do we know that? Because the next verse talks about how he survived it.
قلنا يا نار كوني بردا وسلاما على إبراهيم.
And then we have here it says, we said, and again, the royal we is what God says. Sometimes it is referring to God's own power. I think it can be done through a specific channel. We don't know. The royal we is used quite a lot. But we said, O fire, be cold or cool and safe on Abraham. Now here, I'm going to imagine they're going to say something about, It is reported in hadith collected by Bukhari that Abraham said while being thrown into the fire, God alone is sufficient as an aid for us, and he is the best protector. Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakil. Maybe Hasbi Allah wa ni'mal wakil. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Either way, God said, as Abraham was set ablaze, that the fire will be cold and it will be peace upon Abraham. In a burning fire, not getting burnt. So this brings back the question of, was he supposed to lie? Is the lie that what got him to this point? But then if it's the lie that what got him to this point, then it's still a part of God's plan, and it's still something that he needs to power through. Why did he lie? Did he not lie? I don't know. But we do know after it, God saves him by a literal miracle. You're not going to get burnt by fire, which is wild. And it also goes to the testament of, you don't really have to worry about the prophets and messengers. God's got them. They can literally be burnt alive, and if they're not supposed to die, and God's got your back, if God's got your back, who's going to hurt you is the main question. Nobody. So yeah, it's interesting, very beautiful visual. Abraham was getting burnt before, which is made it cool. Anyway, I was trying to make a joke, but it doesn't matter. Amazing, fantastic, miraculous.
وأرادوا به كيدا فجعلناهم الأخسرين.
Yeah, and we see this time and time again. And they wanted a plot for him, a plan for him, a scheme for him to hurt him. But we made them the greatest losers. And the Quran says multiple times, specifically with the word kaydan, it tells all the disbelievers, go, plan, make your plans, and we'll make our plans. Let's see who's the best planner of the two. And God always wins. So there is nothing to fear, really.
ونجيناه ولوطا إلى الأرض التي باركنا فيها للعالمين.
And we saved him, we delivered him, we saved him. And Lut, which you may know from Sodom and Gomorrah. We've talked about it multiple times, and we're going to talk about it once more a little bit here, but not so much, but just a little bit. Lut was brought to Sodom and Gomorrah, which is the most spicy, controversial verses that we've covered. But we saved him, and we saved Lut to, and so that's why they've added the word delivered him, because we saved him from one land, put him in another. We delivered him from one land, put him in another, to another land that we have blessed in it for the worlds. And we don't exactly know what land that is, but we kind of know what land that is. Here it says, Abraham and his nephew Lot migrated from Babel, Iraq, to Jerusalem, also known as Al-Quds, aka that's where it was when my grandparents were there. 3/4 of my grandparents are from Jerusalem, which is pretty cool. 3/4 from my grandparents are from Al-Quds, which is now renamed Jerusalem. Sorry. Anyway, so Abraham and Lut were saved. And they were brought to, I don't know if it's necessarily Jerusalem, but it says the blessed land, right? The land that we blessed for the world. And then the progeny of Abraham.
ووهبنا له إسحاق ويعقوب نافلة وكلا جعلنا صالحين.
And we bestowed to him Isaac and Jacob, and Isaac is the father of Jacob, in addition. So we gave him a progeny, we gave him a lineage, we gave him, what he always desired, and all we made the righteous, making all of them righteous, and they're all prophets. And some of them are messengers as well. I don't know if they're both prophets and messengers, but let's not answer that question now.
وجعلناهم أئمة يهدون بأمرنا وأوحينا إليهم فعل الخيرات وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وكانوا لنا عابدين.
Yeah, all of them had the same kind of purpose, and we made them leaders, guiding by our command, and we inspired to them to do good deeds and establish prayer and giving alms tax, zakah, and they were to us worshippers. Great, fantastic, beautiful, respectable leader men that, inspired us all to do good deeds, pray, pay tax. It's not pay tax like pay tax to the government. Pay alms taxes to give money to the poor, as a way of purifying your finances, as a way of purifying your money, as a way of taking care of the weakest class. We should pay tax to the lowest of the class, not the highest. But such is life. And now we're back to Lut.
ولوطا آتيناه حكما وعلما ونجيناه من القرية التي كانت تعمل الخبائث إنهم كانوا قوم سوء فاسقين.
You have to talk about it because it gets mentioned. But anyway, and Lut, we gave him judgment and knowledge, and we saved him. It's that same word, nejaynahu, before that it was delivered, but now it's saved. Oh, now they're adding the word delivered him. But nejaynahu means saved. From the town, we saved him from the town, that which was doing wicked deeds. Khaba'ith is, it's like, how do I describe khaba'ith? Disgusting deeds. Committing disgusting sins. And indeed, they were a people that were evil and defiantly disobedient, rebellious, quite evil. And if you are new to this channel and you haven't seen, this is talking about the people of Sodom and Gomorrah. And the everlasting argument that has been happening on this channel for quite some time is that the common Muslim understanding is that the the disgusting things that they were doing and the rebellion, a lot of Muslims believe to be active homosexuality, which I've been reviewing them as much as I can. I don't have the same view. The biggest claim against that, one, we covered it in a previous episode. You should see the last episode of me and Safa arguing about it, arguing about what it means. And she said, oh, Lut offered his daughters because he offered their daughters. They were more lawful because they're not men. And it's not homosexuality. It's about their gender. And I was like, it doesn't mention the gender. It does mention about the daughters, but the daughters were usually offered in terms of tribes. And then the other main claim in the Quran that is mentioned several times is وَكَانُوا يَأْتُونَ الرِّجَالَ مِنَ الشَّهْوَةِ مِن دُونِ النِّسَاءِ, which means they used to approach men with lust instead of women, which, listen, I can completely understand why people think that this is about homosexuality, because, you know, approaching men with lust instead of women, you're like, oh, that sounds like homosexuality, right? And I agree, it does sound like it. But I have a lot of questions. My questions are, okay, approaching men with lust without women, does it mean approaching men and women with lust is better? Is the problem the lust? Is approaching women with lust instead of men better than men with lust instead of women? Is it about both? Is it about neither? Is it about lust? So I have a lot of questions about it, and for me it's not that clear, but for a lot of Muslims, they would disagree with me. I'm sure a lot of Muslim scholars would disagree with me. It's continuously a spicy topic, and it's continuously one that I am actively reviewing and actively looking at from as many angles as I can. And I've not yet seen the Quran say that if a man has sex with another man. I've seen it, and it also says the people of Sodom and Gomorrah used to lust over men instead of women. It doesn't say that the men. It's the same word if it was a group of men, but also a group of the whole group. So I don't know. I have my theories. Obviously, people aren't going to agree with me. Obviously, I'm a fringe concept and fringe idea. But I don't see, and like for instance, the concept is if two men love each other, is that not lust? Is that different? Is because the word is shahwa, lust. So there I have a lot of questions. Of course, none of that is being mentioned here. All that's being mentioned here is that the Qawm Lut, aka the people of Sodom and Gomorrah, used to commit disgusting acts, and they were defiantly disobedient. I believe that they were talking about rape. Go back, roll the tapes with me and Safa. She thinks it's about lusting over men, which, I mean, like, does lusting over men mean sexual acts between men? Possibly. Like, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying it doesn't feel correct. But, yeah. Also, fun fact, there is no hadith from the Prophet Muhammad about homosexuality, which is interesting. That I found very, very interesting. Because that's the first thing. I mean, I'm mostly focusing on the Quran. I'm not looking at hadith at all. But I did look up that fact. And the Prophet Muhammad has no recorded statement, which I find wild, has no recorded statement saying that homosexuality is bad or wrong, which is very, very strange. That was very strange. Doesn't mean that it isn't. Doesn't mean that it is. I'm not making any claims. I'm just saying that I don't necessarily get to the conclusion that the Muslim majority has gotten to. Is all I'm saying. Whew, spicy.
وأدخلناه في رحمتنا إنه من الصالحين.
And we admitted him into our mercy. So we admitted Lut into our mercy. Indeed, he was of the righteous. Yeah. Pretty straightforward.
ونوحا إذ نادى من قبل فاستجبنا له فنجيناه وأهله من الكرب العظيم.
And Noah, if when he called from before, so we responded to him. Noah called to God asking to be saved in a way. So we saved him and his family. And of course, there's a little bit of a caveat. The believers in his family, because we've covered also in the verses of the Quran that at least one of his sons did not get saved because he did not believe, even as the storm was going on. But essentially, Noah called to God, and we responded to him, and we saved him and his family from the affliction, the great distress the flood.
ونصرناه من القوم الذين كذبوا بآياتنا إنهم كانوا قوم سوء فأغرقناهم أجمعين.
So we helped him from his village, those who denied our signs and denied our could be verses, could be signs, denied our signs. Indeed, they were a people that were evil, so we drowned them all. And that's the big, great distress, the great flood. Everybody got drowned. GG, good game. Thanks for playing.
وداود وسليمان إذ يحكمان في الحرث إذ نفشت فيه غنم القوم وكنا لحكمهم شاهدين.
And I don't know this full story, but it might be there in biblical, in Jewish or Christian scriptures. But it says, and David and Solomon, when they judged concerning the field, when pastured in it the sheep. The sheep of people. Yeah, someone's sheep went to the village and pastured in a specific village, and they were trying to figure out who it was, and it just says David and Solomon, they judged, and we were to their judgment witnesses, which can indicate several things, as in this is the trial, as in this is a way of seeing, are they worthy, are they doing it right, or it could be saying that we witnessed what was happening, and we gave them the witness to kind of let them know what to decide. But I just imagine we were witnesses to their judgments. Makes Occam's razor. That's the simplest explanation.
ففهمناها سليمان وكلا آتينا حكما وعلما وسخرنا مع داود الجبال يسبحن والطير وكنا فاعلين.
And so we gave the understanding of it to Suleiman. So we guided young Solomon to a fairer settlement. Let's see here. Man's flock of sheep strayed into another man's vineyard, eating, destroying all its produce. When two men came to David for judgment, he ruled that the shepherd must give the animals to the vineyard owner in compensation for the damage. On the way out, two of the young men met Solomon, and the shepherd complained to him. Solomon discussed this case with his father and suggested that his sheep should be kept with the man who lost his produce so that he may benefit from their milk and wool, while the shepherd worked on the farm to restore it to its original state. Eventually, the farmer would take back his farm in perfect condition, and the sheep would be returned to the shepherd. David was impressed by his son's insight and approved his fair judgment immediately. Okay. So I don't know if this verse is, I don't know where this story comes from. I don't know if it's, but we also know that David and Solomon, so I guess David was Solomon's father. And David's Zabur, David's Psalms, are relevant because they're mentioned as a part of the book. But essentially, they're saying that David had first given judgment, and then Suleiman gave the more appropriate judgment, and David appreciated Suleiman's judgment, and he gave. Now, Solomon is a very interesting figure, and we're going to get into why he's interesting in just a couple of verses. But he's known as the king that animals, birds, and let's read what the verse says first, and then we'll kind of explain what I know. We'll explain it to Solomon, and to each we gave judgment and knowledge. So there are differences between their judgments, and there are differences between knowledge, but they're both blessed, and they're both chosen by God, and they're both educated and given by God. And we subjected with David the mountains to glorify our praises, and the birds. So the birds and the mountains, we subjected the mountains as well as the birds to him, our praises along with David, to glorify to David. And this is kind of like Sulaiman was given a special regard. Animals were kind of responding to him, and we'll see in a few seconds, spiritual beings were responding to him. He was like a king of kings in a way that everything in the domain of the earth was responding to him and praising his glories and appreciating him, and Like I also heard stories about I don't know if we're going to get this in the Quran, because I've heard this from my parents, about elephants and ants, and the ants were worried, and then he kind of came back. I don't know if these stories are in the Quran or if they're just things that I've heard, so I'm not going to talk about them too much. But either way, David also fantastic man, and given the Zabur and the Psalms are part of what we're doing, part of what is the book of God. But Solomon was given specific abilities, reverence, rain, kind of, it's amazing. And we were the doers, and we were the one who did it all. We gave them all these things. Now let's hear a verse or two about Solomon. Yeah, we subjected with David, the mountains and the birds, and we were doing. Is it Solomon or is it David? No, first we talk about David, and then we talk about Solomon. Okay, that's what it is. Yeah, okay.
وعلمناه صنعة لبوس لكم لتحصنكم من بأسكم فهل أنتم شاكرون.
Yeah, and we taught him being David, the making of the coats of armor, so that they will protect you from your battle. Now, I don't know if you've heard of the Battle of David, David versus Goliath. I'm being very coy. David versus Goliath is one of the most epic battles, and obviously the Jews also love the story because David was among the Jews, essentially. And he was given armor that he was guided to create by God, which protected them from battle. And again, they won against the Goliath was supposed to be like a man of giants. They were like twice their size, or Goliath himself was the large size. Either way, they were outnumbered, outsized, outmatched, and yet they won. David versus Goliath is always seen as the weaker versus the stronger, and the weaker overcoming it. Free Palestine, by the way. فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ شَاكِرُونَ. So then will you be grateful? Will you be grateful? Yeah. And then the last verse, which is the spicy verse. No, it's not the last verse. We have two verses. And then, the last two verses, which are very spicy verses, are about Sulaiman.
ولسليمان الريح عاصفة تجري بأمره إلى الأرض التي باركنا فيها وكنا بكل شيء عالمين.
And to Solomon, the wind that is the storm winds, blowing by his command to the land that we had blessed in it, which that's the second time the land that we have blessed in it. It kind of feels like the same land that Lut and Abraham were in. And there seems to be a lot of force, and it seems to be Jerusalem. But what does it say? It says, and to Solomon, the storm winds that blow by his command, because he was known also by another name as the Magic King. He had the ability to cast spells. But I don't know if it was cast spells, or I don't know if these things just responded to him, like he could speak to the wind and it could do his bidding. But we'll see something even more interesting in the next verse. And we were above everything all-knowing. So we know everything about him. And also, if you know about the Book of Solomon, there's also a lot of ties of witchcraft to Solomon, and that he taught a lot of people about witchcraft and about magic. Now, these are things that are not in the Quran. All we know that the Quran is saying is that the storm winds blew by his command. And beyond that, let's see what the next and last verse for today is that kind of talks about what else he could do.
ومن الشياطين من يغوصون له ويعملون عملا دون ذلك وكنا لهم حافظين.
Okay, and it says, and of the devils, and I want to say this is very interesting, of the devils, those who would dive for him, and they would do work other than that. They would also do work other than that. There was a story about them, how fast can they bring a throne from some other kingdom. They, at the snap of a finger, it brought it. There's like lots of interesting stories. Solomon is a very interesting character. But let's stick to what the Quran is saying. They used to dive for him and other things as well. And we were, of them, guardians. It was we who kept them in check. Says several things. First of all, here you'll notice they said, we subjected some jinn, not the word devils. And when I first read this and when I first heard about this, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. He's jinn. He's talking about jinn. He's fantastic. But not all jinn are devils. This is talking about specifically a subsect of the jinn that are devils. Because in Surah Al-Jinn, which talks about it later, so it says some of the jinn are believers and some of the jinn are devils. And there's another example of الشياطين من الرجال والإنس. الرجال والجن. I'm going to butcher it. I'm paraphrasing it. Another part of the Quran talks about humans and jinn being devils. There are human devils, there are jinn devils. So devil is not necessarily a race, but it's more like a description. So it is understood that these are jinn, correct, but more specifically devilish jinn. And the verse ends with saying, and we were for them guardians. I like this description of it. It was we who kept them in check. Because if you read the chapter of jinn in the Quran, it says that any human that dealt with jinn tried to get some power, and they got some power, but they were devastated, exhausted, overwhelmed, overtook. It's generally considered, it's an extreme taboo to deal with jinn, but primarily because you will suffer. And the only way that this could have worked for Sulaiman is because God was we were for them guardians. It's important that God protects Sulaiman for it. Now, another expression here that they dived for him is very interesting. Dive to bring him pearls. Now, I've heard a very interesting perspective on this. The Quran says multiple times the jinn are made of fire, smokeless fire. And then they're going into water, so being the idea that they're going into that which hurts them, and they're willing to do pearl diving is what we assume that they're pulling from the ocean. It could be something else. They're going into the water against their nature to retrieve something for him. Like his command over them was so strong that they could do something that would be physically harmful. Now, that is just conjecture. That is just things that we kind of understand. What we do see is that the devils were diving for him and they were doing things for him other than that, and that God used to be their protectors, keeping them in checks. Lahum hafidhin, guardians. God used to be their guardian. Or God and whatever forces are at disposal at God's command were guardians for these jinn. Very, very, very interesting. Sulaiman is a very interesting character in the Quran, and in Judaism, and in witchcraft. He's very infamous. He's like, yeah, I'm sure you could spend a lot of time looking at and talking about him. But yeah, I love when the Quran gets into story time because it's so exciting. It's so cool. It's so much, like, lessons are always, kind of good to learn and fantastic. And there's always joy, regardless of what section of the Quran I'm reading. I always find guidance. I always find clarity. I always find peace. I always find hope. But I love story time, So it's very cool. Yeah. Thank you for watching this episode. I appreciate you. And I will see you guys tomorrow. I'll see you folks tomorrow, because some people say guys is not inclusive. See y'all tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in. As usual, we always end with Sadaqallahu al-Ali al-Azim. Get out of here. Love you. I appreciate you. Ma'as salama. Bye.